For the longest time, it was thought that pornography wasn't something that would be attacking or infesting or taking root inside of the church. We thought we were immune to it. We thought that our sense of morality and our connection to the holy God, Yahweh, Jehovah, the very person of Jesus Christ would be this shield and fortress around us and that it wouldn't be an issue. And what we have found over the last 2 years as the newest studies have come out is that we were wrong. We've taken a look these first few weeks at a biblical worldview or a biblical approach to the technology that's in our lives. And we've ultimately come to this conclusion, that technology is a gift to be used as a tool. However, it should not be our boss, you know? That at the end of the day, we should only take our orders from Jesus. And so we took a look through Scripture. We took a look through some of our pop culture issues that are happening right now. And that's the kind of conclusion we came up to, was that at the moment, our phone puts a notification up, and that demands that we check it then. Or our phone rings, and no matter what's happening, we put a pause to what's happening because my phone's telling me it's time for me to answer this. Or we have something else that happens on our phone and our attention is diverted. And so the phone became the thing that was saying, hey, look at me. Hey, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, eyes on me kind of thing, right? It became our kindergarten teacher all over again, clapping for our attention, saying, hey, I know there's someone important in front of you. I know that you actually should be studying for this test. I know you should be pouring into these plans that you got going on, whatever this is. I know you should be doing family dinner time. However, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Let's go. And so we said, hey, we got to put a stop to that. So the first 2 weeks, we've really tackled that. And this week we're diving into one of the things that happens primarily on our phone, not only on our phone, but primarily on our phone, that's really wreaking havoc in our lives, in our relationships, in our families. One of our values here at Foundation is healthy families. And we understand the dynamic of family has changed so much over the last 4 or 5 decades. That many of you have very non-traditional families, blended families, single moms, single dads, grandmothers raising grandchildren, aunts raising nieces and nephews, foster parents, adopted parents, legal guardians. So many different family dynamics. And so to try to figure out, hey, how do we really hold this value up and say, hey, regardless of the family dynamic, there are key principles that we think we ought to adhere to or pursue. This is one of them. The church is not immune. The latest statistics say 68% of men that attend church struggle with pornography. Came out last year. 68% of men that attend church struggle with pornography. 33% of women. We look at the number of men and we think that's a huge number. But the place that it's grown the most over the last 5 years is with women. It's growing there faster than it ever did with men. It doesn't just affect us in the church. For teenagers aged 13 to 17, 57% of 13 to 7-year-olds in the United States view pornography at least monthly. 83% of 13 to 17-year-old boys have seen group sex online. 57% of girls aged 13 to 17 have seen group sex online. Right now, 30% of teens receive sexts. For you boomers in the room, that's sexual text, right? Like, what's a sext? I don't get sexts. I just get texts. Does your thing sext? You might only text. If you're not getting the sex, it's good. It's good. It's a good thing. 30% of teens are receiving them. 15% are sending them. 56% of divorces today, a major contributing factor is a spouse's continued use of pornography. Right now, it's a 318% increase in chances that you would have an affair if you are actively watching pornography on a regular basis compared to someone who doesn't. You're 318% more likely. All of those are sobering, but this one really stood out to me. I think the rest of them I was fairly prepared for, as it's something that I've paid attention to for quite some time, the statistics and the research. This one was surprising. The average age of exposure to pornography, 9 years old. Emerson turns 9 in May. This is a giant problem. So for some advice, I think it's only right that we look at a few giants in the faith and ask them, what do you think, big brothers? There's 3 that I want to kind of seek some advice from today as we tackle this issue. Peter, John, and Paul. Peter, just to give you an idea of how cool a big brother he is, Peter's the kind of guy that'll pull out a sword and cut off your enemy's ear, right? That's what he'll do. But he's also the guy that's so incredibly loyal to Jesus that it was time for him to be crucified. He said, no, I can't do anything like Jesus did. Will you flip me upside down? I don't deserve the honor of being crucified as Christ was crucified. So flip me upside down. Do it. I can't do it. Peter's a pretty good guy to have on your side. And John's a pretty good big brother as well. There's a passage that we kind of see when he's interacting with Jesus. If you make John too upset, there's a place where he's having an interaction with Jesus. He's pretty upset at his people, and he just flat out asks Jesus, hey, do you want us to take care of these guys? We could just call down fire from heaven and burn their rear ends. That's what he says. That's what he wants to do. So that's John, but he's also the kind of guy that will call fire down from heaven to just ruin your entire day, or he's the guy that Jesus says, you know what, I'm not going to be here anymore. I need someone to take care of my mom. John, would you be willing to take care of my mom? He's a pretty great big brother. Paul, he's a bounty hunter, a Christian bounty hunter, not a Christian as in someone who follows Jesus, bounty hunter, but he's a bounty hunter who hunts Christians, has taken the life of so many Christians, put so many more in jail, and he turned church planter. These 3 guys, I think we can trust. There's enough crazy in them that we understand, that they understand what it's like to be someone who's a part of the world, but also an incredible amount of Jesus follower in them where their words can be trusted as great wisdom. We'll start with John. John wants us to see clearly the difference between Jesus and the enemy. He said, as we process this idea, as we process this morning this idea of what Satan's attempting to do with us through our digital devices and pornography, John gives us a really clear picture of, hey, there's two things that are in motion, and I want to make sure that I give you incredible clarity about what 2 things are in motion and what they're trying to accomplish. We see this in John chapter 10, verse 10. He says this. This is Jesus talking, John writing. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So John's remembering this passage, this moment that Jesus is talking, and he said, hey, I've got to make sure that the world understands this incredible clarifying moment. He said, let me give you the motives of what's happening. The thief comes, in other words, the reason he's coming, the purpose for why he's coming to us. The thief comes only explicitly This is it. I'm going to put a box. I can put all of his purposes inside this one box. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But Jesus backs it up and says, but I have come, if you want to know why I've come so that they may have life and have it to the full. So we have Satan, evil on one side, Jesus on the other. Satan's descriptors are, I'm here to steal, I'm here to kill, I'm here to destroy. Steal is take what doesn't belong to you. Let me just be upfront with you. If pornography hasn't taken something from you yet, give it a little more time. Because it's gonna. Here's the crazy thing about it. When it decides to take it from you, it doesn't even use what it took. It just throws it away. Like, it's one thing for someone to steal something from you that's so valuable and then them actually put it to use. And it's like, well, at least someone's going to enjoy that, whatever it is. At least you have that satisfaction. I'm not sure if your mind works that way. Somebody out there is going to enjoy it. When Satan takes it from you through pornography, that's not what happens. He takes whatever he's taken from you and he wads it up. He's like, yeah, I don't need this. This is worthless, actually. To kill. Pornography has killed so many things. The definition of kill is to put a stop to what is living. What is it in your life right now that is so alive? It's breathing and growing, and flourishing. What is that thing? To steal, to kill, to destroy. Destroy's definition is damage to the point of no longer functioning. To destroy it. John says, hey, I just want to paint a picture of the two motives of what's happening in our lives. Jesus on one side and Satan. And just to understand what Satan's trying to do, he's got three things. He wants to take it from you and then discard it. He wants to put an end to what's living and flourishing in your life. Or he just wants to damage it so bad you can't use it anymore. It's completely destroyed. And then on the other side, you have Jesus. And Jesus says, I'm simple. I came to give life. But not just life. Life to the full. To live to the full. When I think of full, I just think of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, think about it. That's like the greatest picture, you know? It's like he's walking around, he's like, can I eat it? He said, oh, you can eat anything in here, you know? Like anything? And then, then the fat guy goes in and gets in the tube. That's fine. I identify with him. I'm in chocolate. I don't like chocolate milk. But that seems like life to the full to me. This incredible picture that Jesus says, hey, I've created everything, so that you might understand the goodness of who I am as a follower of Christ. And that you might enjoy the fullness of living a life of Jesus followers. Life is about growth. It's about adrenaline. It's about new things. And Jesus says, that's what I came to give. John gives us the gift of clarity when it comes to the motives behind what Satan wants to accomplish and what Jesus wants to accomplish. And in terms of how pornography fits into that, here it is. Pornography isn't life to the full. Sex. It's fake sex. So as we interact with it, as we watch it, maybe there's this thing that says, man, this is beyond anything wow, this is great. Like, this is life to the full sex. And Satan's like, got him. And Jesus is saying, but that's not real. That's not real. And that'll kill you. And will destroy you. And it'll steal from you. Life to the full doesn't kill you or steal from you or destroy you. And John says, I want to be incredibly clear. I guess here's a better question. As followers of Jesus, Here's the question. Is pornography something Jesus created or something Satan's created? That's really got to be the question we ask. What if pornography came with a disclaimer that says what you're about to watch in time will kill the things you love the most, steal things from you that you love the most, and completely destroy things that you deeply care about? Enjoy the show. But it can't, can it? It can't make that disclaimer, right? I mean, surely we can't make that disclaimer. Why would we say those things out loud? But is that what our mind is having to be tricked into? No, it doesn't actually do that. It doesn't do those things. It doesn't do those things. Now, there's so many people in our culture that have been convinced now it really doesn't kill, steal, and destroy because I'm smarter than that. Because I have control of my things. Because I'm in charge. I get it. So John wants to give us clarity. Peter wants to warn us about a reality. The reality of Satan and the reality of our shared struggles. He says it this way, 1 Peter 5, 8 through 9. It says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings." Peter says, hey, there's two things I need you to do. I need you to be alert and sober-minded. When it comes to alert, we asked about the practicality of what does it mean to be alert towards this idea of pornography. For those of you maybe in the addiction world that have had people and family members, this is probably a decent terminology, a familiar terminology for you. In order to be alert about pornography, you have to know your triggers. You have to know the things that happen or occur in your life that then trigger that thing in your mind that says, you know what, now is a good time to sit and watch this thing that doesn't have a disclaimer on it. It actually seems everything was fine with this. We're going to ignore the disclaimer, the Jesus thing. Now my trigger is here. As I've talked to people about this over the last 10 years, here are some of the triggers that I have found that is very common with guys that have come and talked with me about it. Frustration. Frustration at home. A frustration that they just can't seem to fix or solve. Rejection. Loneliness. Oftentimes, it's a location, or even more so, a time of day at a particular location. And understanding, being alert towards your triggers, that's a huge step when we're saying, hey, we want to actually make a difference here. Raising our awareness level about, hey, I've taken an inventory of the amount of times I've struggled with it, and at 90% of the times it happens in the same place or at the same time or as a result of the same interaction I have with my wife or my boss or someone else like that or my husband, whatever it is, fill in the blank, that I can kind of look back and say, yeah, actually there is something incredibly similar about when these things happen. And then you have to say, all right, well, if I'm aware of it, if I'm alerted to this issue, then what do I do about it? The second thing he asks us for is a sober mind. This is a great word because pornography is an addiction. Pornography is not just I left the seat up kind of thing. It's not one of those kind of slip-ups. Pornography is hardwired into your brain. Chemically, it releases those things that go inside of your brain that makes things feel good. It's a learned behavior. After a while, you anticipate the release that comes from it. Just because it's a learned behavior, addiction is real. Both understanding that you have to treat it like an addiction, as well as understanding your triggers. Peter is saying when it comes to fighting anything with the devil, hey, these are two incredible things you need to be aware of. You've got to be alert and you got to be sober. I like that he says that the devil prowls around looking, like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And you don't see lions coming when they hunt. They just kind of creep up on their prey. And they inch closer and closer and closer and closer. And before you know it, it's over. You have to be alert. I love what Peter says as he begins to paint a little bit of a picture for those of us who are struggling in the faith. He begins to paint a little bit of picture with some encouragement. He says, hey, these are our two things. I need you to be alert and sober-minded, but I also need to encourage you to stand firm in the faith. And did you see why? Did you see why? He said, resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Now, he wasn't writing specifically about pornography. He was writing in general about, hey, the struggle of keeping a faith, right? But it applies to us in this moment. Were you surprised when you heard that 60-some% of men inside the church are struggling with pornography? That a third of women are struggling with pornography? In other words, you're not all by yourself walking through this. Other believers are experiencing the same thing. You are not alone. But Satan would want to convince you that you're alone. He would want to convince you that, hey, this is not something that you can share with anyone. This is not something you can talk about it. Because the shame that you feel right now, in fact, that's probably what he's telling you. He's like, you know what? You should be so ashamed of yourself. As Clint is talking, you know, in fact, he's probably convinced you. Clint's talking to you. Someone must have told him. No, I'm not. And don't let Satan convince you of that. I'm talking to every single one of us. But the fact that you're feeling something and I'm like, you know what, maybe I should do something about this. Maybe just trust the Holy Spirit's lead to say, you know what, maybe it's not Satan shaming you, but the Holy Spirit saying, hey, I'm trying to make a way here and I got to get some cutting going on. There's a machete in my hand and it's going to come close to your face every once in a while, but let him do the cutting. Let him do the freeing. Satan would love to convince you that you're alone in your struggle, but that's just not true. Just not true. On the other side of things, we can't allow a large number of men struggling with it to be our excuse. Well, I guess everybody does it then. Maybe I'm not by myself. Maybe it is what it is. In our pursuit of following Jesus, our measuring stick here at Foundation is Jesus. It's not the person sitting to your right or to your left. It's certainly not me. It's none of our leaders. It's none of our worship leaders, none of our band, none of our production crew. It's none of them. Our measuring stick is Jesus, and all of us will always fall short when we measure up against him. And that's okay, because that should then be motivation for us to take another small step of faith in the right direction. Knowing that at the end of the day, we will press on in our faith, attempting to be just like him, but acknowledging in the end, he will have to help complete us, which he's promised to do. But we shouldn't wait on his completing us and not do anything in the meantime, because he's given us the ability through the power of the Holy Spirit to defeat the things in our lives that attempt to steal and kill and destroy us. Paul gives us an action step. Both Peter and John warn us and give us clarity of the motives of what Satan wants to accomplish in our lives. Peter then gives us the idea of, hey, these are the two things that you've got to have, that if you understand the motives, here are the two things you need to have, the sobriety and being alert, because, hey, you don't see the lion coming when he's hunting. So these are your two things that you need to have. And then Paul says, hey, I've actually got an action step for you when it comes to fighting with evil, fighting with the enemy, fighting with Satan. Here's your action step. It comes in Philippians 4, chapter 8. It says this: finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. He says, hey, he's talking to a church that's immensely divided and having all kind of issues. And he has a call to unity, which we talked about last week in Philippians 2, where he says, hey, if you have any connection with Jesus, let that be the most important thing in your life. Even if you have different political views or social issue views or any of those things, allow your connection with Jesus to be the most important thing so that it draws you together in unity. And the other things that you can sit next to someone you disagree with and still worship Jesus because he's more important than our opinions or our views on things. And so now, at the back half of the book of Philippians, he's saying, hey, and finally, after I've said all these things to help unify you and point you to Jesus, let me give you something to actually do. I'll read it again. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So I guess the question we have to ask is, do any of those things describe porn? Is porn true? You tell me. I'm asking. Is porn true? Is porn noble? Maybe as we go on, more people will jump in on this. Is porn right? Is porn pure? Is porn lovely? Is porn admirable? Then I've got to think that Jesus is trying to call us away from that and into something that reflects more of what he desires in the kingdom. This is incredible news, though, that Paul gives us as he's talking to a church that has issues just like we do. He's talking to them. Did you hear the little subtle hint of the incredible news that Paul puts in there? This is the beginning of incredible news. Did you notice that he just uses general descriptors of things? He doesn't say, hey, let me give you a line-by-line sheet of the things that you should be thinking about. Like, for instance, you should be reading 7 verses out of the Bible in the mornings. Think about that. And then you should pray for 3.5 minutes on days that end in Y, and that's the rest of the days 4 minutes. And then he didn't give these specifics. He just gave these general descriptors. Do you know why? It's the ultimate vote of confidence. He says, because you already know what are those things. You know what is noble, and you know what's not noble. You know what's praiseworthy, and you know what's not praiseworthy. You know what is true and right and lovely and admirable. You already know those. I don't have to give you a list because you know, which also means you know what's not those things. And so it's easy for us to ask the question here, and eventually everyone catches on to the game that I wanted you all to respond, that's it. We are all aware it's not what we should be looking at or taking part in. It's common sense to us. So how do we stop? How do we stop? I think one of the first things we have to begin to do is that if you're sitting here thinking, I picked the worst day to come to church, you need to change your attitude. Because if you don't think this applies to you, it's because you don't care enough about the people that are around you who are being stolen from and their lives are being destroyed. And their marriages are being killed. This should matter. It should matter because there are women and men that you interact with every day that silently know that none of the things that they look at on their computer screen or on their phone fall into any of those categories, and they feel stuck. They feel stuck. Every other moment of their day, except for the moment where it's on and they're watching it and they're enjoying themselves, that's the only moment of escape they have. But every other moment in their day, they realize they're stuck. And they're hoping that they have an ally somewhere who will help them get unstuck. It's an epidemic. When we ask the question, how? Let me ask you this. What is your purpose? What are you contributing to your family and to your world? Because here's the truth. If you were to be able to cut this out of your life, you would then have been given a gift back. A gift of possibly a clear conscience. A gift of more time. A gift of not having to hide something. A gift of setting the example for your children. A gift of having a story of being able to overcome something that many people in the United States are just chained to the ground by. A gift of being able to speak into someone else's life who thinks it can't be done and it's impossible. That's an incredible gift. What would you do with such a gift? You see, it's not enough to not do the wrong thing. You have to replace the wrong thing with something right. If you're thinking, you know what, I've identified my triggers and 90%, 80% of the time it's at this location during this time, or it's a result of these things. When this happens, automatically I go into this place. This is what I do. If you've identified that, if you understand what those things are, then the question becomes, hey, once you identify the trigger, you need something to replace in that moment of weakness. That's just the beginning. And I'm not sure what that is for you. Maybe it's this. Maybe when you feel that moment of weakness, maybe instead of opening your phone or opening your computer, maybe you pull out a journal and you write to your children about how difficult following Jesus is, but how it's worth it because of who they are. And you just allow all of those pages to stack up and you give it to them on their graduation day. Maybe when you have that much free time, you call Craig at Bridging the Gap and say, hey, for the next couple hours, I got nothing going on. Can I come by and do whatever? Or maybe you just stop by the church office, because we don't do anything all day, you know? And it's like, hey, you want to do something? Of course we do. We'll make time. Your friends will make time. You've got to replace it with something good. The late psychologist Al Cooper said, this modern allure of pornography has been driven by a AAA engine. Porn is available, affordable, and anonymous. It's available because there are millions of pages of pornography all over the internet. Millions. The growth of internet-enabled devices, you can get on the internet on just about anything. And free and open Wi-Fi is available in almost every major city. It's affordable because right now, the latest statistic from this past week that I got was 90% of people still only view free pornography. 90% of folks view what's free. And it's anonymous. Pornography is used secretly through private browsing and incognito windows. Available, affordable, and anonymous. And it steals, it kills, and it destroys. Maybe we're looking at those 3 A's and thinking, this is too good to be true. Available, affordable, and anonymous. Honestly, it doesn't get any better than that. And as long as it stays anonymous, then how could it steal from me? How could it kill the things I love the most? How could it destroy things? Satan's tricky. And you won't see him coming. only 7% of churches are actively doing something about pornography. And that's because it's hard, incredibly difficult. And so I want to give you some practical things this morning that will be a step in the right direction. We know as a church we need to come up with a more comprehensive plan for how to help someone who wants to be free of this. And we're working on that. But in the meantime, as we work towards that, we did spend some time to gather 3 things I want to point you at least in the direction of. And I would encourage everyone to write this down or put it in your phone. That way, number one, if you need it, then everybody's like, oh, he's or she's putting it in their phone. They must be looking at porn. You don't have to do that. But secondly is there's probably someone in your life that will need to know, and you're going to be like, oh, he talked about it Sunday, and you have to go listen to 45 minutes of him talk about it, and then he'll tell you at the end on YouTube. You don't have to do that. You can just tell them. Here's the first one. On Wednesday nights, one of our partners in the community, Coweta Forest, has an anonymous meeting. It's for sex addicts. I know you might be thinking pornography is not a sex addiction. It is. It is. If it's something you're doing weekly, every other week, it is. And you won't be the only one that's there if you show up. There will be many people there that are struggling with a pornography addiction. So that's Wednesday nights. There's an app that I would encourage you. It's only for the iPhone. So if you got an Android, it's not going to help you. But if you have an iPhone, it's called Overcome Porn. It's a 40-day deal. It's an incredible app. I've done a good bit of research on it. And everything I've read about it is just unreal. And I've recommended it to folks already that I've had conversations with, and the feedback thus far has been really good with it as well. You just have to look at it and see. It's $3, and it goes on your iPhone. And the third one is a thing called Covenant Eyes. There's a number of services out there that help you with the addiction to pornography. Covenant Eyes is one of the better ones. If you're looking for a foolproof plan where it makes it impossible for someone in your life to not participate in pornography, it's not out there. What is that saying? It just came to me on that. The locks are only for honest people, I think. Is that what the saying is? You get what I'm saying. If someone wants to get around something, they can. But at least it helps point people in the right direction, and it causes the steps for them to get around it, for their brain to process just a little bit more. Why am I having to put this passcode in, disable this thing, shut this thing off, just to look at oh, that's right, I'm not supposed to be looking at it. So it helps with that. Covenant Eyes does one of the incredible things where it offers you an ally of your choosing, that sends reports from screenshots from your phone and your digital devices, either daily or every 3 days or weekly, to a person that you choose. It blurs the images, but it just has technology that can read what the screenshots are, and if it's something that's flagged, they send it. I have read reviews that said that every once in a while, like a kitchen table got flagged. I guess that leg was really curvy or something on the kitchen table. I don't know. But the kitchen table got flagged and got sent. And so it's not foolproof. It's not like it's perfect. But those are 3 options that right now you could get started today and take a step towards it. If it's something that you want to talk about, and you're like, hey, I need to say it out loud to someone, I'll have that conversation with you. I know Jason Walton, our community outreach pastor, any of our pastors on staff will have that conversation with you. There's a number of guys that are in the room today that we've had conversations about this and are incredibly passionate, specifically towards the guy end of things, for helping you get out of this and get over this. And so if you're needing someone, an ally, if you'll just contact me, you can do that through the office number or shoot me an email, clint@foundationnewnan.com, or come see me right after we're done. I can get you connected with a guy or a couple of guys that would love to help walk through this with you. If you're a wife of someone who has used pornography and there's a lot of hurt, I have a resource that I would love to send you. It's an article that just kind of helps walk you through some thoughts that you would have. I know I'm saying this all from a guy perspective because I'm a guy, but the same is true for the inverse. We have folks that would just love to help, and we know in a room this size that pornography is just rampant, and we understand that Satan is attacking our church and every other church with it, and so we just knew we had to do something. So hopefully you have a little bit of clarity. Hopefully you understand, at least the next moment you're tempted this week to look at it, you know that the motive behind this is to kill and steal and destroy from you, and that it does not give you life, and it certainly doesn't give you life to the full, and that you should be alert and sober-minded as you're entering into these places to know your triggers and to be aware of what's hiding in the weeds just to your left or to your right, and that ultimately you should be encouraged that you're not alone, that there are people, tons of people that are struggling with it. That can't be your excuse, but it ought to be your motivation to say, enough is enough with me doing this by myself. I'm going to get someone to help me through it because it is an addiction. And then we walk together with the understanding that, hey, there is better life ahead, and that you'll be given a gift in return of a story of overcoming, more time, more opportunities, and a chance to really lead your family in a way that is noble and praiseworthy and admirable and pure. Those things are close to our heart when we talk about healthy families.